Hello, everyone. I'm Adam with AEW Maine Treasure Adventures. Today, we are on a little different kind of adventure. We are going to 152 Main Street, Bar Harbor, Maine, to check out an amazing hidden treasure. This building has been around since the late 1890s, and a number of different businesses throughout its storied history have been in this location. Most recently, it was home to Sailor and Hook Gift Shop, but has been many other businesses in the past. Towards the back of the store, you will see this hanging on the wall. Some people think it's a Maine moose or white-tailed deer mount, but they are wrong. It's neither of those. It's actually an elk mount. Elk are the second largest species within the deer family. What makes this a treasure is a few things, but we will focus on who harvested this amazing animal. It was a former president of the United States of America, Theodore Roosevelt. Teddy was the 26th president of the United States. He assumed the presidency at age 42 and is the youngest person to become U.S. president, serving from 1901 to 1909, the same time that the hunting trip took place. That would make it an even cooler history story, if true. I don't have any reason to believe it isn't true. This elk was brought back from a hunting trip out west. It was purchased by the owner of the original business that was in the same building in the early 1900s from one of the hunters that were on the hunting trip. Early pictures of inside this store show it hanging on the wall. It was realized later on that the hunter that shot the elk was Theodore Roosevelt. This was verified from the man that was on the hunting trip with Roosevelt. Teddy had lots of ties to MDI long before he was president. He even helped form and sign laws that later helped preserve land for what would eventually become Acadia National Park, along with a lot of other places. Theodore Roosevelt spent some of his happiest days of his life on Mount Desert Island. I believe this is why he gave the elk to the Bar Harbor summer resident that was on the hunting trip to bring it back to Bar Harbor. I don't know if he knew the guy would sell it to the local store or not, but you gotta make that coin somehow. One more cool local fact: Teddy's grandson, Theodore Roosevelt IV, lived on MDI, right over in Soamesville, Maine, up until he passed away in May 2001. He is now buried over at Brookside Cemetery, not too far from his Soamesville home. Let's look at the elk side of the story before we continue talking about President Roosevelt's tie into this. Elk as a whole were hunted in North America a ton. Some subspecies of elk in North America have been hunted to extinction, including the eastern elk and the Merriam's elk. The last eastern elk was shot in Pennsylvania on September 1st, 1877. The last Merriam elk in North America hunted to extinction in 1906. Elk were hunted as a game species. The meat is leaner and is higher in protein than beef or chicken. They were highly sought after. Elk are one of the largest terrestrial animals in its native range of North America, Central, and East Asia. The word elk originally referred to the European variety of a moose. Elk dwell in open forest and forest edge habitats, grazing on grasses, browsing higher growing plants, leaves, twigs, and bark. Male elk have large blood and nerve filled antlers, which they routinely shed each year as weather warms up. Did you know that elk fossils first appeared in the fossil record 25 million years ago, during the Oligocene in Eurasia, but do not appear in the North American fossil record until the early Miocene period? Even though Theodore Roosevelt was an avid hunter, he wasn't going out and taking tons of the same animal or overhunting a certain animal. He was using the entire animal for food, research, study them and their habits. A lot of people don't know he was a taxidermist. Roosevelt learned taxidermy and preserved many animals in his collection. Most of his collection still exist. I'll explain where in a moment. Roosevelt is widely considered to be a prominent conservationist, often referred to as a conservation president, due to his significant efforts to protect large portions of public land during his presidency, including establishing national parks, forests, and promoting responsible use of natural resources. There is even a type of elk that bears the name the Roosevelt elk. It is named after President Theodore Roosevelt because of his efforts to preserve the elk's habitat, like creating Olympic National Park to protect the elk habitat. He established approximately 230 million acres of public lands between 1901 and 1909, including 150 national forests, the first 55 federal bird reservation game preserves, 5 national parks, and the first 18 national monuments. He had one of the most impressive collection of taxidermy. Here are a few pictures inside his Sagamore Hill home. Whether or not you believe in hunting, or if this is right or wrong, it happened. It's history, and that's why I'm telling the story. It's interesting. I cannot go back in time and talk with Teddy. He died in 1919. He did leave a number of journals on the hunting trips that he went on. It's said that Roosevelt and his companions killed or trapped approximately 11,397 animals. According to Theodore Roosevelt's own tally, the figure included about 4,000 birds, 2,000 reptiles and amphibians, 500 fish, and 4,897 mammals. A ton of Theodore Roosevelt's taxidermy is on display at several museums, including American Museum of Natural History. The museum displays taxidermy birds that Roosevelt brought back from a trip down the Nile River in 1872. It also displays a snowy owl that Roosevelt shot in 1876 and mounted himself. The museum also has a 2-story Theodore Roosevelt memorial that displays at least 5 animals that Roosevelt killed. The Smithsonian Museum of Natural History displays specimens that Roosevelt captured and preserved. The museum displays specimens from Roosevelt's African safari that were placed on display in 1913. Roosevelt's home, Sagamore Hill, also displays taxidermy exotic animals. I've been pretty lucky and have had a chance to go to a bunch of the locations, like his Sagamore Hill home, located in Cove Neck, New York, the Smithsonian Museum of Natural History, located on the National Mall in Washington, D.C., the American Museum of Natural History in New York City. I've been to a number of other museums that have had a smaller part of his collection. If you get a chance to go to any of these places, they have some amazing treasures from all over the world. It's a pretty incredible learning experience. If you go to the American Museum of Natural History, there are so many amazing treasures that Roosevelt had in his collection. For example, Egyptian plovers collected during his family vacation to Egypt in 1872 to 1873. Cody skull, obtained during an expedition to the Amazon. A passenger pigeon that he donated to the museum. A necklace made by a native tribe in Brazil. The skin of an extinct giant sloth. A harbor seal skull, acquired after Roosevelt noticed a killed seal at the harbor and took measurements. He also donated many specimens to the museum, like a dozen mice, a bat, a turtle, 4 bird eggs, a skull of a red squirrel, and 622 carefully preserved bird skins. Some of the animals on display have since been extinct, some for more than 100 years. The one good thing is we have the taxidermy to show what we have lost. Teddy wasn't the only one hunting these amazing creatures. A lot of others were not only hunting some of the animals, but taking way more than anyone should have been allowed to, causing some of the animals to go extinct. Unfortunately, history isn't always great, but it's important that we don't ever destroy any of it, good or bad. It should always be on display for current and future generations to learn from it and understand why it happened, so we can make better decisions in the future and not repeat the same mistakes in the past. Out of all of Teddy's collection, the coolest one in my eyes is the one right here in Bar Harbor. It isn't the prettiest. It's got some issues of wear and tear, some cracks in the taxidermy. Matter of fact, if you look closely to the nose, you will see a band-aid covering one of the boo-boos that the Bar Harbor elk has sustained over the last 115 years or so of millions of tourists coming through the store and touching it. I really hope the owners will get the elk some restoration as soon as possible. It's not too late to get it repaired and restored to its original state. That way it can be here for another couple 100 years. Without restoration, it will keep cracking, chipping, and the fur getting worn down around the seams. Eventually, it will become too late to fix. Next time you're in Bar Harbor, stop in this location and check out the Theodore Roosevelt elk. Ever wonder what kind of sounds that an elk make? I'll leave you with a few adorable elk videos of them saying thanks for watching, and don't forget to like the video. Until the next adventure, AEW out.